Let me now introduce, it's my pleasure to introduce Mark Sage. Mark Sage is the Executive Director of the AREA, the Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance. And he has a long history in running industry associations for various emerging technologies and markets. Mark's here to talk to us about his industry perspective on this journey we're all on, and particularly his thoughts about ROI from a different point of view. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Have the clicker, Sandy? Oh, I can't stand the excitement. What's going to happen next? Oh, no, of the video, not me. Don't you worry. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much. As Sanjay said, my name is Mark Sage. I represent an organization called the AREA, Augmented Reality Enterprise Alliance. Hands up if you've heard of the AREA. Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Could you do more? Sorry. So yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the work that we've been doing. RealWear have been members of the AREA for a number of years now. And this is who we are, really. It's a global membership-funded, not-for-profit organization helping to accelerate the adoption of enterprise AR. And we're doing that by bringing the ecosystem together to learn from each other, to develop best practice. And some of the things I'll be talking about today will be some of the outcomes and output of the collaboration and alliances together. Just a quick view of the members. Our members kind of fall into three different categories. There are companies that are deploying or have deployed AR. So you can see some of them over here, the Bosch, Medtronics, Exxons, Boeings, Merricks. What's been really interesting is that all from different industries, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on when I talk about some of the case studies. We have a big group of providers of AR technology, and you can see our friends here at RealWear. You know, chipset players, hardware, software, lots of platform providers and stuff like that. And then we also bring a third group, we call them kind of non-commercial organizations, government agencies, research institutes, universities, standards organizations, so bringing a kind of real insight into what's happening next. And really our focus is about bringing that all together so everybody learns, everybody can accelerate AR that much quicker. Okay, now then, you can't have a presentation without some lovely graphs and charts. So I'm sure you've all heard of the Gartner hype cycle curve. And I kind of wanted to add to Sanjay's kind of conversation about AR is now ready to scale. Okay, we are ready for scale, and I'll show you the reason why. Now, I'm going to apologize already because these are really difficult charts to show, and the point isn't really about being able to see all the detail in there. But AR started coming onto the Gartner hype cycle curve back in 2004. In this innovation trigger, Gartner was saying that there's something here in this AR thing. And as you can see, 2005, 2006, it's in that innovation trigger thing. Amazingly, for some bizarre reason, it completely drops off in 2007. I've no idea. But comes back in again in 2008. So from sort of 2009 through to 2015, we're in that peak of inflated expectation. Beautiful phrase. But really, there's been a lot of hype within the industry, lots of people talking about what it could do, and not so much people showing what it should do or what it is actually doing. So we kind of followed in that little path for a while until we get into 2008. Let's just move these across a little bit. And then, unfortunately, into 2015, then suddenly we hit the dreaded trough of disillusionment. You know, the Gartner's analysis is basically saying, look, we're not sure this is going to happen. We're all kind of a bit disappointed. It's going a bit slow and stuff like that. But because of the people here, because of companies like RealWear, because of basically the industry understanding the benefit that AR can bring, I'm kind of pleased to say, and probably a lot of you would know, that actually in 2019, AR is no longer in the hype cycle. It's been moved out to that and into a proper kind of quadrant of technology that's really offering benefit. Okay, so it's really exciting that we've actually made it. There's still lots of work to be done, but because, as I mentioned, people in this kind of room, you know, we're actually moving the technology forward. Reaching a mature state, I would take with a little bit of pinch of salt. I think there's still work to be done, but we're on the right trajectory. So, and a lot of you will know about this, but I just like to make sure we understand, the relevant data is an important part of what the AI delivers, but I like the phrase contextual, relevant, and timely. And this is, again, what RealWear would do, provide that information to the worker when they need it in the right environment. And that's a real important advantage of AI. Resource management, we've seen a couple of use cases on that, obviously remote assistance and alike. But where I really think, in speaking to it's been about 450 companies in the last year or so, real-time compliance. I think Sanjay mentioned it with the Airbus. This seems to be the next kind of use case that's gathering momentum. Being able to record something that needs to be captured, recording it there and then, being able to store that and being able to retrieve it. I've been to a few organizations that are still doing that with a piece of paper and a rubber stamp. The time consuming, and then unfortunately what they have to do then is store that in some great big warehouse. If anything goes wrong, they have to then find that piece of paper to see what had happened through those processes. So I really begin to, see the real-time compliance being the kind of next big use case. Don't get me wrong, the resource management and relevant data is something we're beginning to see now. And it's all about the bottom line. I'm going to talk a little bit about ROI, okay? It's all about increasing that efficiency. It's about reducing time to do tasks. It's about minimizing those errors and lowering costs. Anything we can get as an organization or as a company deploying AR off the bottom line is fantastic. Okay, so some just kind of simple high-level overviews of the benefits of using AR. Sanjay has talked about some. I'm going to talk very briefly about a few other kind of organizations that are showing some substantial savings. Newport News Shipbuilding, one of the area members, a 96% saving. Yeah, it's reduced their inspection time from 36 hours down to 90 minutes. That's amazing. That's all time that person could be doing something else, and really a great saving off the bottom line. Some examples of remote assistance, again, these are all big numbers. These are all big numbers. The numbers that Sanjay showed are big numbers as well. This is all coming off the bottom line. So we're really in an exciting and a growing technology that can deliver some real benefits to our organizations. Just going back a little bit to the area and kind of then reflecting on some of the work that we have done, one of the key things we want to deliver is that thought leadership. It's about the information that business decision makers need to successfully and to convince people to deploy AR, okay? I'm going to talk a little bit about ROI, we're going to talk about safety, we're going to talk about security. We've suffered, I think, in the industry from a lot of hype. We've all seen kind of videos of whales jumping into things and stuff like that. We need to get practical. We need to get very down in the real detail. So we do a lot of thought leadership stuff. Wanted to mention, again, Sanjay talked about that Marquette piece of research. We're actually doing a webinar with the Marquette and the EPRI guys who actually asked for that research to be done on the 26th of January. So if anyone wants to try and get a little bit more insight into that and more detail, have a look at the area website, thearea.org, and the events page, and come along to the webinar. There's lots of webinars that we've done and continue to do just to provide that thought leadership information for you to, again, be more informed. The networking in marketplaces is all about bringing the organizations together. The educate side, we already see with our members that it's difficult to bring new people and new skilled workers into this industry. So we're focusing a lot with working with universities and educational organizations to train the next set of skilled workers. But really, where our focus has been, and what I'm going to talk a bit more about now, is reducing the barriers to adoption. Okay, whilst we've got some really successful case studies, I know, and I've spoken to some of the people, it's hard. There are a number of challenges. One of the things we talk a lot about is that AR is not an IT project. It's a change management project. Yeah, there's often hearts and minds. There's different departments need to be thought about and stuff like that. So being able to really kind of work with the rest of the ecosystem, to learn from the providers who have done this task more than once and numerous times, and to gain all that information to help you successfully deploy it into your organization, something that we want to work on and continue to work on. So one of the, we have a number of committees. Now, by committees, they're monthly meetings, basically bringing people together to talk about some of the challenges and some of the barriers to adoption. We have a research committee, and this is great because basically any area member can propose a research project. We do it twice a year, and it's a real, basically they make a proposal, we do a little pitch-in session, and then every member gets to vote. What I really love about it is we normally get between 8 and about 15 different proposals. It gives me a real view on what are the challenges happening in the ecosystem. And I get a whole wide range of different stuff. We've actually done 6. I'll briefly jump onto a few of them after this, but I really want to focus on, we created an ROI calculator. So this was back in 2017. It's obvious, and it's still obvious today, that ROI is a big kind of challenge. So we have a calculator. It was just for the area members to start with. I'm actually pleased to say that we're now going to work to make that available online. So to give you a kind of a tool set to allow you to start working on ROI. Of course, ROI is actually made up of 2 things. There's the costs, and then there's the business benefits. Anyway, we want to make it available. We're working on this and with the area members, and we're going to expand it to a number of different use cases. And what we want to do as an ecosystem is be able to say to the world, hey, look, on this use case in this industry, we're seeing somewhere between X and Y ROI. Now, of course, that you can't go to your management team and say, oh, it's somewhere between X and Y. That's where you can work with the providers to get into that detail. But at least we can get information into the ecosystem about it. It's a kind of a traditional ROI where you put in your different productivity bits. A couple of things, and I want to kind of, my insights, I'm not going to do what Sanjay talked about here as a kind of process. I'm going to talk about some of the insights I've gained by talking to lots of people about it. Number one, and this sounds so obvious but often missed out, try and measure the process you're trying to improve before you start to use the AR. Okay, it sounds really simple, but a lot of companies kind of go into the AR bit and then have to sort of wheel themselves back out of it. So one little tidbit for you is, if you can measure it first, that's perfect. And the more detailed you can measure it, the better. A second little Sage's tidbit is cost of ownership. Think about other use cases you can do by using this device. Yeah, it's expensive to bring a device and a software solution in. So are there a number of different use cases you can do? Not straight away. I think there's a graduation bit, but the business case can be enhanced by saying, actually, we're going to work on this use case to start with, but here's 2 or 3 extra ones that you could use. Number 2. Number 3, use sort of tangible, but also some, and by tangible I mean measurable, but also some intangible benefits. A number of companies I've spoken to talk about having really happy staff, being able to work with the kind of younger people that come into the organization that want to use this technology and will absolutely buy it up. Upskilling your workforce, being able to capture the information that the experts have been doing for years and years, but then being able to use it right across the organization. Sometimes they're difficult to measure. But just if you can capture them through interviews or just conversations, that really builds that business case and that justification part. The other part, and we did this when we've been doing the ROI calculators, have you included all the tangible benefits? Are there some things you've not thought about? Is looking at different kind of ROI models or different companies helping you to pick some stuff up that hasn't been thought of before. We've had some examples where, in the kind of reducing the breakdown, they were able to manage their inventory a little bit better. They knew what parts they had. So little things like that, there isn't normally or not quite associated with your ROI bit, but something you can think of. Here's another one, potentially on the kind of slightly more negative side, but be careful about adding all your digital transformation costs into your AR business case. Yeah, if you have to go through that process, it can be quite expensive. Sometimes it's difficult to justify all of that in your AR business case, but there are lots of other reasons or benefits you can use when you look at your digital transformation. A couple of others. One of the things we had with this ROI calculator was kind of a supporting best practice. And one of the things, I talked about digital transformation, but actually ROI is becoming a little bit more difficult when we started to use, and everybody is now, thankfully, agile development processes and software as a service. So you just have to kind of, when you get that down to that nitty-gritty, just think about, is ROI the right kind of ways? Because these projects may have a ongoing timeline. There's not a start and a stop finish to them. And you're kind of paying monthly, so you're adding new customers on at different times. So, okay, so it's just kind of as we develop our business processes to deliver technology, there may be some other ways to think of ROI. And I mentioned this before, and I think it's really important. You know, please don't think as an AR project as an IT project. It really is a change management. It's about hearts and minds. I like the piece that Sanjay said about getting that kind of key worker, that person who's going to really drive the technology within the organization. A little kind of story from Newport News Shipbuilding again. They said that they actively went out and found the gnarliest, oldest, 40-year veteran of the shipyard. They build big aircraft carriers to work with them to deliver this AR technology. Once he realized it was bringing some real benefit into his work, he was the biggest salesperson they ever could have. He was the person that went around to everybody and said, hey, we got to use this. So again, when you're thinking about deployment, I'm not saying you need to find the gnarliest, kind of oldest person, but think about using your staff to be able to deploy that. Okay, so just moving on from the ROI, which again is a really, really important part, but we've done some research on security. It's a big theme of the work today. It was actually the first research project that was voted in by the area members, so you can see how important it is. We've members like Lockheed Martin, and you say, what's your biggest number one challenge with AR? And they go, security. And you go, okay, well, so what's your second one? And they go, security. And you guess what the third one is. So, we've created this kind of an overview of the risks in management and a framework and test protocol. Actually, we've made this available to the whole ecosystem now because it's a few years old. And the security committee, which I'll come on to in a minute, is actually continuing that kind of work to define best security practice and stuff like that. So yeah, that was a really interesting piece of research. Just quickly, I'll go through some more of these. One of the things, we called it Safety and Human Factors Framework, but there was a lot of members saying, we kind of made this mistake as we went through our deployment. We didn't think of these requirements or challenges. And someone else would say, hey, you know what, we had the same sort of thing. And then another company would say the same sort of thing. So we did lots of interviews and actually captured all of this into a framework, which basically from a hardware and a software perspective asks a lot of questions, a lot of kind of requirements questions. Things like, are you in a dark environment, damp environment, noisy environment? There's a whole bunch of software ones as well. And by actually capturing all that information, you just click on it, and it's only giving you what the key challenge is, some of the safety or some of the standards that's available for it, but it just asks the question. What we're trying to do as an ecosystem is make sure that we all learn from each other and not make the same mistakes. So that's been a really interesting one, and actually Boeing used this as part of their work when they, staff now can suggest AR projects, and you use this as one of the ways to sort of check out and challenge and rate the different AR projects. We had a focused kind of piece of research into AR adoption in manufacturing organizations. So we did lots and lots of interviews to try and find out what are some of the reasons that companies aren't deploying AR. And again, lots of it's to do with kind of human bits, lack of a strategy, legal, workers' rights. A lot of the interviews was actually done in Germany. So again, it's what we've come up with is another framework, a reusable thing that again helps members to assess what their potential internal organization, or if they're a provider, their customers will be. And by just by asking a few questions, you can kind of get an output that helps you identify what work you need to do to overcome those challenges. So again, anything we can do together to identify and overcome those barriers to adoption. We've done an interesting piece on merging IoT, AI, and AR. So there's a kind of a realization that AR is only actually part of a bigger solution for companies. And we've done a whole kind of piece on what's the current status, who's doing what are the key use cases, and who are providing those kind of platforms to support that. So you could say potentially a little bit out of the AR scope, but been really interesting because we do see companies want to solve problems. They don't want to just deploy technology, they need to solve problems. And often those problems can be enhanced or used in these different technologies as well. Okay, and then the latest one, which we're just working on at the moment, is Web AR. You probably would have heard of it, or should be at least thinking about it. Basically, what is it? What benefits does it bring? What are the challenges for it? Is it going to be a technology that's going to really help the ecosystem? And actually, companies like Mozilla are working with us on this and stuff like that. So part of this output will be a kind of an executable, a kind of a prototype that people can use just to see the benefits of AR and just touch and feel it a little bit. And then we're just literally kicking off the 7th one. So I'm, again, fascinated to see what kind of research questions come back or proposals come back. Because at the end of the day, as I said, it's a real good indicator to me and the wider ecosystems of some of the challenges that companies are having. Just real quick, a few other kind of area committees. One of them is the requirements bit. You know, we've identified quite early that actually it's quite difficult if you're starting a project from scratch. And wouldn't it be great to have a set of requirements? Something you can obviously change and manage and update, but you know, you don't want to be starting from a blank piece of paper. So we've created this kind of schema of needs, which goes from, well, goes above the use cases, but right the way down into the low-level details, with the purpose of anybody can go in and say, hey, you know what, I'm in this industry, I'm interested in this use case, download me all this information. And then you can do whatever you want with it. You can adapt it, you can change it, but at least you've got something. Okay, so we're continually looking for people to add to this. We're almost treating it as like an open source set of requirements that anybody can add to. And kind of the other 3 committees, you know, Sanjay again's mentioned it, safety. I love the safety committee because it tends to be a lot of the enterprises or the customers talking about some of the challenges that they have. And they're all the same. Even in their completely different industries, there might be a tweak, there might be a kind of change here, but they're often the same. So they're learning from completely different companies, not competitors, but you know, being able to have that open conversation. Some of the work we're doing in the safety committee, well, I'll show you, there's kind of an infographic to be able to communicate some of the benefits, but also some of the risks potentially with wearables. You know, we need to get that correct information out there. And what we're doing now is taking each one of these lozenge shapes and diving into more detail. You know, it might be a white paper, it might be a use case, it might just be a video or something like that. But again, it's all about getting to that level of detail that we all need. I mentioned the security committee a few times and the human factors committee. So that's all about, obviously, UX, UI, best practice. It's chaired by Qualcomm, having some great conversations in there now. I'm nowhere near a UX expert, but I'm learning a huge amount. And it's a great opportunity for all those kind of people to get together who are experts in that field, but start to do best practice for, you know, a device that's worn on your head or has a kind of a 3D effect, you know, and like the HoloLens and stuff like that. We need some best practice. At the moment, I still see in designs that are really kind of 2D, tablet, phone-based and stuff like that. So we need to up our game on that UX and UI. That's it. Hopefully that gave you some kind of insight to what we're doing. You know, number one, I want to thank you for pioneering and doing the work that allows us to really see and show the benefit of AR. Thank you, RealWear, for the opportunity to come and speak today. You know, RealWear being a great kind of member and pushing a lot of the conversations and stuff like that. And I know of some of my friends in the back of the house there. So good luck. Keep it going. I'm really excited to listen to the rest of the day. And if you want to grab me coffee and stuff like that, please do. Thank you very much.